Yeah, okay. So the Zoom people might not have seen the sign that welcomed people coming in. And some people said, what's that mermaid sign about? And in some ways, the mermaid sign is also part of why I'm wearing fairy dust around my neck and this really blingy, beautiful feather. And in fact, because I'm remodeling our whole house and retreat center and had no clothes available, you will see this dress, which I've had for 30 years since California, with these shimmery things. So it turns out that my work is pretty deep, pretty theoretical with brain science and models. I like to create simple visual models that take people and help you shift your emotional state from point A to point B. So that's partly why I want to make sure that you also know that we have a lot of fun, and that even if we get into topics today that might feel deep or heavy to you, because we're going to talk about the ways you turn on your most innocent little self, just so that you know there's it's all welcome here, and fairy dust for all of you. So I want to just dive right in and get you involved. I am so grateful to the people that came out in the rain. There's snow on the ground here. We may have a couple people listening in from India or Pakistan, and I'm not sure. If I was on Zoom, I would love for everybody to type in where you're coming from, but I see a big turnout, and I'm just so grateful for the Zoom people. But the people who are here, for all of us locally, it started raining just about when everybody was going to take off, and there's snow on the ground. I don't think the temperature is going to drop, so we'll be fine up until the end when we leave. But I'm also going to try to really keep things moving. And I want to make sure that you know that you can stay after and talk to me for as long as you want, and that we've got some things at the back table there, but also I will stay if there's something that you need help working through. My favorite thing really is letting people know that feeling that feeling better is easier than you thought. And for me, part of the reason I love these simple visual models is because I was so theoretical. I was like most of the people in this room who have done so much spiritual study. You know what? I was going to stand. Whoops. We were talked about me. I was going to stand at the beginning and then sit when it came time for the slideshow. So I'm still going to do that. Does that work for the camera? You can still see, right? I think, Mary, is it still good? Yep. Anyway, so I just want to have you start thinking about some of the ways that you're hard on yourself, some of the ways that you launch into fear, or that you launch into avoiding doing something. And think about if you've ever gotten an email or a text that you were afraid to open. So someone in our community, someone that I was coaching privately, told me that she got an email from the board that licenses her kind of work, and she immediately went to fear. She was sure she had done something wrong, and that was it. They were kicking her out. She saw her career going down the tubes. She was blacklisted. She would never work again. She didn't open the email for 3 days. She lost sleep over that. And we are up against our inner wiring, which has a bias toward negativity. Survival teaches our brain to look for worst case scenarios. And so when we do, though, think about when things like that have happened for you and you instantly turn on yourself the way she did. She was sure it was her fault. She started beating herself up. She kept regretting some deadline she was late on. And that was my thing. My thing was regret, self-doubt, beating myself up, and the indecision that created. So that was a huge revelation when I started doing this work, to be able to help people actually shift out of self-hatred and self-criticism, as I realized my indecisiveness over the years was never about good or bad outcome. It was when I had set up a situation where no matter which one I chose, I would be likely to get on that hamster wheel of regret and beat myself up. So either way, I was like, oh There's no winning here. So it's really amazing and a huge shift in my life to know how to turn things around. And so start thinking about the ways that we do what she did, which, by the way, when she opened the email, it was like an invitation to sign up for life insurance, something like that. So, but we project the movie on the screen of our mind, and that's what we're always reacting to. That is what my work is about, that everything comes back to a thought, and the thought causes the emotional cascade of chemicals, and that in fact, the thoughts are much, much easier to reverse and actually turn into a path to peace than any of us thought. And if you can just shift into being more positive or say an affirmation and it works, that's so great. But then there are these other ones where it's got you by the throat because it's survival driven and the brain is trying to save you using what it learned before. So that happened to me in a situation with a text. It was a few years back, and I got a text having had a difficult conversation the day before with someone I was connected with on every level: coaching, groups, work, friendship, connected to a lot of other people that I know or work with. And I had confronted him about something, and the next day I got a text, and you know how you can read those first two lines? And it says, "I've been thinking about what you said to me yesterday, and I just right away I started, I started beating myself up, believing I had been too hard on him. I was sure he had decided, not forget it, I just don't want to do this anymore. Whatever it was, my mind went to worst case. And think about if you have situations where you place your okayness in the hands of others. So you're just going along, doing what you do, being yourself, or maybe you have a little bit of a difficult situation where I chose to let him know that I thought he was breaking an agreement. And still you're fine. You think you're okay until somebody's upset with you or the outcome wasn't what you thought. And all of a sudden you turn on yourself, you abandon yourself, you beat yourself up. Maybe you don't do that, but that was my thing. And so what we find is that the people that do that do the self-criticism piece as their first go-to thought, have as the other side resentment of others. So if I'm beating myself up, then underneath that, secretly in a place that I hardly even know is there, I'm resenting the other person for not loving me exactly the way I am, not supporting me in every single way. And all this got started early. And so let me just finish the story about my text, is that I noticed that I was scared. And in the old days, I would have rushed to answer the text, read it all, do some damage control, apologize, try to make it okay, whatever. Or I would have avoided it like that client of mine did. And yet, for years now, I've been able to move it into a place where I call it fearless faith. And it's also step one of my no matter what way, which I didn't even hand out today. The no matter what way is addressing blame and shame, judgment of others and judgment of self. So the judgment of others part is what we use the work of Byron Katie, in which I'm certified and which I've presented at Unity quite a bit. And a lot of you have been to retreats or been in things with me doing the work in the way that we do it. And that's not what we're going to do today, because even after I had the work and I had this major paradigm shift where I saw, oh my goodness, whatever's upsetting me is holding the key to my path out of it. And I had heard that forever, and yet I didn't know really how to do it. And this was this very systematic way that I could always 100% reliably take the thing that was upsetting me. And so that's that part. And then the other part that we're going to do today is the wheel of self-love. So I stopped everything. I didn't open the text. I only had 10 minutes before an appointment. And I said, I'm going to take care of this first, this little one. and I found my own innocence. I did what we're going to do here today, so I won't even go into that part. And once I had really gotten myself feeling completely safe, no matter what the outcome of his text, I got in touch with resentment. I was like, how dare he pull out on me? How dare he be mad at me? He's the one who broke the agreement. So I did the work on that, which took me instantly to a childhood situation in my laundry room with my mom. I often go there and I don't know what she said or did in that moment, but it's that laundry room scene. And this time I saw that she was, the wonderful mom who was fun and funny and affectionate and amazing and cookies and then could turn on me or herself or others in a Jekyll and Hyde moment. And a lot of us had situations in childhood where we just said, uh-oh, something's wrong with me. Uh-oh, I caused this. Uh-oh, I need to do whatever it takes to get them back. And so we come up with these strategies that the mind wires in. And it all boils down to kind of one thought behind all emotional pain. And I've sort of found that to be the thought, this should be different than it is. I should be different than I am. You should be different than you are. What happened back then, what will happen should be different than it is. That's what fear is always projecting onto a future moment. So anyway, I was able through just in 10 minutes, and that's with a lot of practice, of course, doing the work and the wheel of self-love, these two tools, get myself to a place where I was completely present for my appointment, had no fear about opening the text, but I waited until afternoon to do it. And it was him saying, wow, I'm so glad you confronted me about all of that. Thank you so much. And we worked through so many things as a result. But just what we're going to do now is each of you, I'd like you to be thinking about where does it happen that you turn on yourself? And remember that those of you who don't turn on yourself, you feel like maybe your issue is that you get kind of upset. I know a lot of people have done a lot of work here and you've worked through a lot of this. And I will tell you though, that it's still there, that whatever triggers you in even the smallest little bit of Velcro in there that's the edge. My key 6 is called enjoy your evolution and embrace its edge. Whenever anything triggers you or has the power to upset you in any way, that's it. That's your work. And even if you've done this much and you've got that much left, that's the journey. In fact, I remember being here and sitting in the back when Rosemary Bradison gave her amazing talk about having been a scientist on the Hubble telescope and talking about self-love being the heart of the spiritual journey, which is what I've always said to her. I was like, yes, Rosemary. So in any way that you are able to discover how you're subtly or not so subtly turning on yourself, that is the moment where separation happens. Separation from life as it shows up, from a power greater than yourself, from yourself. It all starts with these stories, and the blame people who show up as judging or feeling like everything's wrong or somebody's not carrying their weight or all those complaints, they have underneath that a lot of self-criticism. They're merciless with themselves often. And the people who show up like me, where I would judge myself first, had that resentment underneath. So see if you can just make a note on, I've given everybody some paper and I've got pens here if you don't already have it. Those of you who are on Zoom, we invited you to download the Wheel of Self-Love, but don't worry about that right now because this is just 3 simple steps and you're going to walk through particularly step 1 where you find your own innocence, and it'll change your life. So even I started to say, well, anybody need a pen? Well, I said that the work and finding that whatever upset me held the key and what to do helped me so much. It was still 5 to 7 years later. So I got the work when I was about 55. It was still much later when I was able to really learn how to finally let go of beating myself up. And I thought in the course of my life that I would never get there. I really thought regret hell was just a thing I would have to live with. And so if I can fix that, being the queen of regret hell, you know it works. And about, over 10,000 people have downloaded that online. And I think people in my groups, that they know if they're blaming, they do the work. If they're beating themselves up, they do the wheel of self-love. And they're just like, okay, 3 simple steps and we're good to go. And what I love is when you create that space for yourself, then you see that innocence in everyone else too. And it's very, very hard to really, even in the hardest places, in marriage and workplace, you're able to find the innocence in what the other person is believing because you've done that work in yourself. And I feel that no higher calling in some ways, and that my mission therefore is ending self-hatred in the world. If you think about it, do you know any other species that does that? Of course, we're not in the mind of dogs and birds, but I don't think my dog goes, oh, I wish I had caught that Frisbee differently. So, it's something that we learned. It's a learned thing. And when you realize these simple steps, it's super easy to unlearn it. And it comes down to being the hero you've been waiting for. You won't have the resentment because you're not handing it off to other people anymore to validate those ways you left yourself when you were little. So it is about getting you back. And so have you been able to think of a situation for yourself, whether you're in it right now or it's something that you've been in the past? It's funny, usually when I do these presentations, I do them about the work, and I love to say, find an I need them too statements. Even in 20 minutes at Pathways, people are able to find that I need them too. and then we work that and we turn it around. They go, oh, okay, maybe I didn't need them to. Maybe I needed me to. Maybe I needed to give them what so we're not doing that though. This one is about yourself. So just take a moment and think about those times when you did your best and somebody was still upset or they took it wrong. And instead of knowing you were okay, you started beating yourself up. Can you jot down a situation, just a word that would remind you of that when that happened? These situations are harder to find. That's why it's a little hard to teach the wheel of self-love. When people are in it, oh my goodness, it's amazing. But sometimes it's hard to just go pull one up. How many of you, well, let me give you a minute. I'm going to give you 2 things here. One is the situation, and what did your monkey mind tell you that you did that was so regrettable and bad and wrong? That's part 1. And the reason we would go into regret at all, and I write about this quite a bit in my new longer book, is because of fear. We fear that because I said or did this, then now that's going to happen. So those are the 2 things. What did your monkey mind tell you you did wrong? And number 2 is, what do you fear will happen as a result of that? And again, you can go back and work a situation that you're already done with and remember how it was for you back then. It can be a really big life choice, or it can just be something that you said and you walked out of the room and started kicking yourself and being afraid that you had hurt someone's feelings. So I'll start using the slides now. If you want to switch to screen share, we'll take another minute or 2 here. I'll be sure to do share sound Oh, am I sharing my sound? No, that's right. Sorry. If you So this is a meditation. And one of the things the mind loves is when you move into becoming the observer, because what we're doing basically day to day to day is we don't know why we're here. We don't know what's going on. We don't know the meaning of anything really. But the monkey mind tries to play God and it goes, it's kind of like, is that what's happening? But it comes off as a statement. That's what's happening. That's the way it is. They're going to be mad at me. I did it wrong. So it's to be able to move into the video camera on your own thinking process. The mind likes that because it can write down, what was I thinking? What was I believing? That level of mindfulness lowers the heart rate. It immediately starts you feeling better. And we write it down because the ego is so crafty that you could say, oh, here's what I was thinking. It'll start to shift when you start to nail its game. So it's really important to write it down and then you can question and observe those thoughts. In this case, we're not doing so specific about the thinking, but I want to walk through the wheel of self-love with you. And then I'd like to maybe see if someone would let us go through it with their situation or just see if somebody is stuck and see. And if you didn't come up with one, just sit with that. Something may come to you or it'll help you down the road. So it's right now, it was originally just a one-page thing where I tried to document my own process of, wow, I don't do that regret health thing anymore. What happened? And I realized I was going through 3 very distinct steps that I could start to teach people. So it was a one-page thing for quite a few years, and then it became an 8-page PDF. And what when we get, when we're done, you can get the video that goes with that so that everything we're going through today, you'll be able to watch it again later too. So, and that's that Facebook ad that people downloaded. So what's happening is we're going to move from that hamster wheel of regret, anxiety, self-doubt. David Hawkins, in his book, Power versus Force, and the levels of consciousness that he muscle tested, shows that this level of self flagellation that I work with is really among the lowest levels of consciousness. It's below anger and fear, because anger and fear at least move us into action. When you're turning on yourself, there's nowhere for it to go. You're just imploding. And for me, my body took the lead and went into autoimmune disorders. So I do believe that as we clear up this story of self-hatred and regret, our society will get much healthier. So it's a really big deal to be able to learn this and pay it forward. So here's kind of what I already asked you to do, to find a situation, large or small, where you wish you had said or done differently. Even if you're not in that place anymore, imagine the hell of regret you live with anytime you believe there was a better way. Find a situation and then visualize the consequences you fear or that actually did happen. So we're going to go then into step 1, which is when you find yourself into regret hell, the antidote is to reconnect to your own innocence. And the way you do that is to ask yourself, so I always like to use my little fingers, this is you now, and this is you back then, innocent, wonderful you, whether you're 2 years old or whether it was 2 minutes ago, that was the you of then. You go back and stand with, by, and for that little one and ask them, ask yourself, what was I thinking and believing in that moment? So I'm going to give you a quick example. I worked with this thing that we're going through today can be done in 5 minutes. I did it in a 5-hour deep dive day with our Self-Solidarity Circle community. And one of the people said, I can't get over the fact that I made a decision back in college to do this major, to take on all that student loan, and therefore I'm still beating myself up for that. And we were able to go back and find, oh my goodness, where she was at that time in her life, and how scared she was, and how much she was influenced by her parents, and the thoughts that she was believing, and the beliefs she had about student loans. Whatever it is, you go back and you be with that you that you were in the moment, instead of what we often do is we use hindsight as a cruel weapon against ourselves. We would never speak to a child the way we speak to ourselves when we're beating ourselves up for something that we've said or done. So go back there right now. I'll give you a moment and just close your eyes and think about who you were in that situation. And what were you thinking and believing? What were the influences? What were you like? And this is a really important point to get yourself into a place of forgiveness, which is to notice that you did not actually choose to believe what you were believing. It was an unconscious conversions of mental programming and reactions to stimuli. But see that once you were believing it, you could not have acted any other way. See if you can find your own innocence. And watch your mind go, yeah, but you were just making trouble, or yeah, but you could have done it better. So one of the most radical things that I learned, I don't know if many of you know Dale Karangi, who's an acupuncturist in Cape St. Clair, who I saw forever. And I was on the table one day and saying, wow, I've come so far with my illnesses and my divorce and my life and maybe I could be a life coach of some kind. And she's like, well, I'm going to New York to see Byron Katie. And I said, Byron Katie, who's that? I never heard of that. She says, well, Katie would say, if your mind is going, you should do something. And she would say, well, you shouldn't because you're not. That's the reality of it. And I applied that to my past, to my regrets stuff. I should have done something. Well, I shouldn't have because I didn't. It's only your mind that would say, here's the way it should have gone. And that brings us back to what I call the one thought behind all emotional pain. It's a condition. I'll only be okay if X happens. But we have no idea what's being accomplished on a grander scale. And you can't know that you should have done it differently. You really, truly can't know that. Just think of all those times when things went well, went better because something went badly. So the second part of step one is to find find the spark of love. Discover how you were always acting out of love or out of a wish to help. So I started calling that the spark of love for years. The guy that helped me publish this. Oh, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was advancing my own slides. I'm so used to running these groups myself. Okay. I guess if we could go back to number 7 just for a moment and just look at that. That's the find your own innocence is step 1. Thank you. And then number 8, if I'll just try to remind you to advance the slides after that, is the what was I thinking is step 1, the question. Go back and ask yourself, what was I thinking? What was I believing? And now I was just talking about the spark of self-love. So I have discovered that in every single thing we do, there is a motive of love. There is, you will find it. And it's a motive to help someone else or to help yourself. I'm sorry, there's a lot of words on this slide. This was actually part of it. But what I'm looking at, I want part of this process is to say, wow, I can find. So a lot of us have with our grown children, especially this thing where they'll be mad at us. And we're like, well, I was just trying to help. I thought maybe two heads are better than one, and you needed my little piece of wisdom there too. So a lot of the ways people beat themselves up is with their grown children. Regrets about not having been more present for their parents, just different things. But you can find almost always for me, even if it put me over in other people's business, meddling and micromanaging, there was a good and loving wish to believe that I knew what they needed. And those were the situations that actually got people mad at me more often than not. So once I was able to get a little more out of their business, but also find I could forgive myself. Okay, yeah. And my daughter knows I'll come right back and catch myself in something and go, yeah, you're right, I was doing that. But so when you can find that spark of self-love, it's golden. You will find it always. And I'm just going to read this one, number 10, which is what we're doing here. We're moving into a new sense of self-advocacy, support and forgiveness, experiencing warm compassion for the well-meaning you that acted the best way you could, given what you were believing in that moment. Realize that even underneath the worst of behaviors, you can always find a loving motive, a wish to help yourself or another, and forgive and cherish yourself like never before for that little innocent motive. That was me, that little girl in the laundry room doing whatever it took to kind of get her back, fix it for her. And this work has helped a lot of parents who said, well, I don't yell at my kids, but I am really hard on myself. And I saw, because of that text message and the deep work I did in those few minutes, I saw that it didn't matter if my mom was beating herself up or being angry at someone else. In fact, it was almost worse for me as a child when she was hard on herself. I would do anything to make her not be mad at herself. And I also learned how to do it. I was like, oh, that's how we get over problems. We beat ourselves up. And the words should have and could have were real in my family. And I have since come to know they're nothing. They're, my master's is in sign language linguistics, and this is a sign, which means it's like nothing there, just air, basically. And there is no should and there is no should have, except that your mind came up with a condition and applied it to the current or the past. When people say, yeah, but I could have done better. This was a big argument between someone I was in a relationship with for a long time. He kept saying, no, but I could have done better. I'm like, if you could have, you would have. You couldn't do any better than you did in the moment, given what you were believing. And the reason I'm really hammering this in is it is life-changing. The world really buys into that shoulda, coulda story, and we use it against ourselves. And we are a society of autoimmune disorders and turning against ourselves and bringing our energy down. David Hawkins would say that people in the US are below the 200 level of consciousness where muscle testing works. You can trust the body or whatever in this field of thought with muscle testing to let you know a greater wisdom that maybe you can't see with your mind. But he says, if you're so captivated by your own mind and you've brought your energy down below that 200 level, even muscle testing doesn't work. So in order to help our own health, it's really important to continue to be the one and move into what I call self-solidarity. It's this state that I never had before. And it's not just what you would call self-love. It's a kind of deep inner safety from your own inner critic. It's a self-advocacy and not advocating out there to other people. My self-solidarity circle group got a video from me having just woke up with snow on the skylights the other day going, it's not, it's you're advocating for yourself to yourself. And once you've cleared that up, then you stop handing those littlest parts of you off to other people. That's just such a hopeless situation. When you do, you're basically telling those little parts of you, well, we won't be okay until they smile at us, or they forgive us, or they know we're okay. But when you become the hero you've been waiting for, all of life shows up as love and support, and your energy just comes up. The number of things that have gone on for me in the last 24 hours, where I spent the day yesterday at a building auction in Baltimore. I was on the phone with Lilia this morning when a bird flew into my upstairs flat. We've had, I was on with one of my assistants in India in the bathtub eating Thai food. Just so, it's just that we really can go with no matter what. That's why I call my 6 keys the no matter what way. And the first key is become the curious, compassionate caretaker of the littlest parts of you. It's not only your responsibility, it is your most sacred privilege. Who else can do that but you? You're the one. You're the one who's been with you from the start. You're the one who knows everything you've been through and everything you want and all the things you secretly feel ashamed of. You're the one. That all is between you and you. And when that happens, all the rest clears up. So we're going to just break into breakout rooms for just a minute. But first, I want to say, does anybody have anything where you didn't, even without sharing your private situation, do you have one where you weren't able to get a shift, or maybe you were, something you've been stuck in for a while? And we'll come back and finish steps 2 and 3 after the breakout. My best thing is working directly with people. Are there any Zoom people too? I wanted to make sure for the Zoom people, this little breakout room is going to be short. It's going to be fun. It's the thing that the people in my groups look forward to the most. So I'm hoping you will stay for the breakout room if you're on Zoom. And if you're going to leave, be sure you leave before then, but I'm hoping you will stay. So if you want to raise your hand on Zoom, there is down at the bottom a little thing that says reactions. If you slide your cursor down, a little menu will come up and it says reactions, or you can just wave your hand on Zoom and go like that. If you have a stuck situation that you'd like me to support you with, that you couldn't find your way out of it, and it's fine. Maybe everybody got through it. So.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Gwen.
Hi, Sean. I'm here in cold Ohio. It looks like a beautiful room you're in there.
It is. It's gorgeous. And it's so much warmer having grown up in Iowa. Ohio and Iowa are way colder than Maryland.
Yeah. Wait, I'm trying to start my video. There.
Hi there.
Okay, so I was having a little hard time answering the question to find my own innocence in a situation with my daughter when she was a teenager, because it was a rare time when I kind of lost my temper, and I don't exactly remember the details, like what was I thinking. So I just feel like, wow, I should have kept my cool. And it's because I'm not recalling what upset me so much. I mean, in general, I know that she kind of stopped going to school, even though she's very smart, and she was just kind of laying around acting depressed and not responding to
And I want to make sure you know, by the way, I want to make sure you know that this is being recorded, and that anybody who shares here, make sure that you're not sharing anything that you feel you wouldn't want others to hear.
Thank you.
If you've
Okay.
already done that, then we can cut that out or something before we share it. But if you're okay with that, is that okay what you shared?
Well, if this ever ends up to the world, then I'd prefer not, but we can talk generally about, in other words, the question of not really enough to really see my innocence, kind of like I know that the motivation was love, but I'm kind of feeling it so much because I'm not um remembering enough.
Yeah, that can also happen a lot of times where there are errors of omission, where if you actually said something and you can go back to that moment and find what you said and think, oh, what was I believing that caused me to act that way? That's easy. But what about all the things you didn't do? Because there's a lot of moments of not doing something. How do you pick the moment you chose to not do it? And you can pick one moment in time where you weren't doing it. And why didn't you do it? So that's one of those other times when it sometimes is challenging, but that actually is what we work on even more. And it does work where you can go, oh, well, I was afraid to make that phone call, or I was too busy, or I didn't even really want to do it. Lots of times we find people don't even want to do that thing they're beating themselves up for. They bought into that somebody else thought they should. So right now, first of all, why did you go into regret hell to start with on this thing?
I would say it was brought up to me recently, again,
By her?
indirectly.
Okay. Okay, sorry. And yeah, so that's what happens. We're going along, we're just doing the life that shows up. And then all of a sudden there's a moment where we've separated and we allied ourselves with a thought that says bad, wrong, should have done it differently. Oops. I'm seeing me on the screen now. Right. Anyway, so I do wish I had brought up Zoom here because I'm just so used to working on Zoom on my own computer. But Gwenny, are you still there?
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay, so if you were to, okay, and if you were to take a general moment of
Mhm,
how you believe you were feeling back then and
mhm.
what your motives might have been and
Yeah,
what might have been going on in your life or your menstrual cycle or anything.
probably a good generalization, a good conglomerate thought would have been, I want to connect with you and you're just pushing me away.
Yeah, I've got somebody in a group right now who's got that, a daughter about to leave home, and they seem to be just at loggerheads all the time. And she's like, and she, yeah. So, and
I mean, that can be a pretty desperate thought.
it can, yeah. And think about the part of you that felt almost like you were the little or abandoned one, being that you needed her help or attention, and to the point where it actually made part of you really angry that she's, is there something like that?
Yeah.
And
Temporarily, like I usually like it just kind of bubbled up to the surface that one time.
right, and were you also concerned for her well-being? Were you worried
Mm,
about her path?
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, because that'll drive it a lot with parents if we feel like they're going down the wrong road or something and we think we can help, but they're not connecting with us and we're just like desperate.
Yeah.
So let's pretend that that was it.
Hmm.
So if we were to say you shouldn't have gotten angry, just to do a mini piece of the work.
Uh-huh.
Gwen also is certified in the work, by the way. Somebody that I knew from.
Certified, but still this is a situation that needs attention.
And
Yes.
this isn't the work, this is the Wheel of Self-Love, which is not really quite the same. But yeah, a piece of it is to go back and say, you should have done it differently. That come back to that one thought behind all emotional pain. This should be different than it is. You should have done it differently. Is it true?
Oh, yeah.
Ah, she's a dyed-in-the-wool believer. Can you ask?
That's like out of my whole life. Honestly, I have to say that's the one thing that is haunting me.
Yeah, I mean, we've got people whose children have stopped talking to them for 10 years at a time. And, there are things where you feel like whether you did something or whatever, I think these issues with our grown children can be just the deepest and hardest to get beyond. So can you absolutely know it's true that you should have done it differently in that moment?
Almost a relief to consider that maybe not. So no, I can't absolutely know
And how
it's
do you
true.
react? What happens? You're going along your daily life and you're fine. And then all of a sudden the thought hits, oh, there was that moment when I was so horrible to my daughter. How do you react when you believe the thought that that moment, that pure, beautiful incarnation of things all coming together, that that moment should have been different than it was, and you shouldn't have yelled at her? How do you react? What
I
happens when you
see
believe?
this, I get this image of universe putting a big rubber stamp that says failure on me. And also I see damage to my child. And it's like it overrides everything else. Like
Where do you
that's
feel it? Sorry, go ahead.
I feel it in my heart. Yeah.
Mm,
I'm also having some minor heart issues in my life physically. But
oh,
anyway, yeah,
mm.
I feel it in my heart. And that's the main thing. And also my breathing gets shallow.
And how do you treat your daughter when you're believing the thought you should have done it differently? This is all part of question 3 of the work, by the way. Is it true? Can I absolutely know it's true? Question 3 is where we're at. How do I react? What happens when I believe that thought? So,
Desperately,
how do you, what?
I feel like desperate to fix it, but at the same time, try to balance it out with giving her all the space she wants. And so it's kind of like out of control and something that I don't seem to be able to, you know, really make happen and just hope for the best. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is like, um, I messed up. Uh, so
And maybe you don't
yeah,
even ask for what you want some of the time, or be your
well,
amazing
there's
self, because you're sort of this apologetic thing. Or
it's more like not feeling free to be me, but yeah, walking on glass.
yeah. And how do you treat yourself when you believe the thought, I should have done it differently?
It's like there's a damper on everything. Like I really have a really comfortable, a small house, but a comfortable, warm life here with plenty of hobbies and different things I like to do. But then that thought comes in, it's like dark and you're not very good.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're not very good. And why didn't you do it differently?
And when you, from that moment, we try to work from specific moment when you notice you're believing the thought and you're starting to react to it. I don't know if you can find one. It might be right now. Who would you be? Let's take right now, since it sounds like you're in it.
Yeah.
Who would you
Uh-huh.
be without that thought? Everything else is the same, except that thought is deleted from your mind. It doesn't mean you have to delete it. It just means imagine a Gwen without the thought, I should have done it differently right now.
Okay. Um, I feel like a normal mom, like a human being that just was trying all the time. And I also do it's easier for me to be in touch with the beauty of my daughter. And like, for some reason, it's like it diminishes the the whole thing of me. It's like diminishing the ego and seeing her with a bigger embrace. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh my, it's not this big thing about me. I was wrong. I was bad. I should have done this. I'm no good. It's more like this child was going through a hard time. And um it feels more connected.
You know, I wasn't looking at you when you said that this child was going through a hard time, but in my mind, I saw you patting your heart and talking about yourself.
Mm.
This
Oh,
child,
really?
this
Mm.
child was going through a hard time.
Yeah, that's part of it, right?
You were. You were very concerned for her and really wanting to connect. And that was the child who was really going through a hard time. And that's part of what this spark of love is about. I want everybody to know there's a plaque, a little wall hanging. It was kind of ungrammatical, that from Asian country, that said, a quote from the Buddha that says, "You, as much as anyone in entire universe, deserve your love and affection."
Mm.
And that's where the spark of self-love comes from. It is perfectly okay when we feel, from whatever programming, we feel we are under attack. We feel we are being abandoned or ignored. We feel so concerned for her that you're desperate. It is your right as a human who's imperfect to go ahead and act out of that place to save yourself. You're just as important and valuable as she was, and you needed help in that moment. And you can find that, you know, your lashing out came out of somewhere, but it was some attempt to save and help both you and her. And I think almost everybody can relate to that, and we've got to be able to give ourselves permission. And there's this big story out there about selfishness. And I don't even know what the concept of selfishness is, because aren't we supposed to take care of ourselves and look for how to be good to ourselves? But it really is not only your responsibility, but your privilege. And if you're acting, just think about it. If a tiger is coming at you, whose job is it to take care of you? It's yours. So if your story tells you that someone else is the enemy and what they're saying or doing is toxic to you, whose job is it? It's yours. So you lash back out of that thinking that says they're this and I need them to be that. So it's still, that's why the questioning of thoughts that we do, and that keeps letting go, letting go, letting go of any story that would paint another or ourselves as wrong, it gets so much lighter, because those stories that are driving this big reactivity that you now regret just aren't there that much. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to be human.
I do.
Yeah. So turn the thought around. Let's do the turnaround to the opposite. You should have done it differently.
I should have done just what I did. Ooh.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was nothing physical. It was all words. But um
Yeah.
yeah, I should have done just what I did, because it's like, wow, it had to come out somehow. And
And that's all that showed up.
yeah, that's what showed up. An immediate apology afterwards. But um yeah,
And that's the kind of a positive turnaround to the opposite. The negative turnaround would be,
I
I sh-
shouldn't have done it any differently.
because,
I shouldn't have done it any differently, because it it had been building up, and it just kind of poured out. it was the way it happened. Also, another thing that makes sense to me is I had held in a lot for a long, long, long time. And that's not necessarily helpful either.
Right. So we're not going to do all of the turnarounds for in sake of time, but I always love the 100% turnaround, which is you look at the reality of what showed up and humble yourself to the grand unfolding, which is I shouldn't have done it differently because I didn't, which is like your one. I should have done it exactly the way I did.
Mm,
And just, it's so sweet to go to that humble place where you're like, who am I to know what's getting accomplished there in the grand scheme of things? It might be
yeah,
that you are here on earth to find forgiveness of yourself, where you had to act that way because you're so amazing on so many other levels. You had to act out that much to find a place where you wouldn't be able to find forgiveness and work through that, which is the healing for all of us, when we can.
and it could be also that it kind of in the grand scheme of things or the long run, it works for her too, finding her womanhood
Yeah, I agree.
through that background shaping.
I've found that with my daughter too. And so many times now where she comes back and says, wow, mommy, look how I treated you, instead of me saying, it just because she saw you jump right in and apologize. And the way it went from there on out, that's what those of us who I call pretzel people, who are into turning ourselves into a pretzel, bending over backwards to make it okay for everybody else all of the time. And often the shame-driven or fear-driven people in our lives are the ones that get all of our attention. So we got all these other people that are supporting us and amazing, and then the ones that are shame-driven or fear-driven and are blaming us for their lack of comfort. And we own it. We believe that we caused it. So that's the other piece, is to not take full responsibility for how she reacted, for not believe that you drove her to whatever course in her life that started in that moment. That still came from the programming that was in her, and her life path is completely out of your hands. And so that's another way to also just that humbleness of not the don't know mind.
Yeah. I'd like to just say one more little thing. The other day, I was thinking about this situation and was, I composed a beautiful song about her and that was included in it. And I just feel like that, that, that possibility is there of really like what we're talking about, kind of diminishing my own beating up, and also at the same time really seeing her difficulty
Yeah.
with compassion for both of us.
Yeah, and just you doing this work today and stepping up and helping so many other parents in the process to find their own innocence, to be in that place of self-solidarity, to stand with, by, and for yourself no matter what, because beating ourselves up does not solve anything. It just drags us down. It just brings more pain into the world. Whereas where you're the one that finds that in yourself, then you'll be less likely to go off on someone else too. So
Right.
thank you for
Thank you, Sean.
your work in the world. Thanks.
Mm,
Well, I think sometimes it's important to do a piece of work all together on one person that exemplifies everyone else. And I'm not sure what I'd like to do still. We've got time for 10, 12, hi Bain, for, let's see, are we set up to go into breakout rooms?
And we're
Okay.
just about ready. Yeah, as soon as you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay, so there's two things. We're going to make this very efficient. And it does take a little longer for the people in this room to sort of get themselves organized and start talking. So I think we're going to have 3 people in a group in this room and 4 on there. And it's going to be fairly short, but I'd like you to share 2 things. Is, have you found your own innocence around your situation? And if so, maybe not all the way, but give at least one example. Finding my own innocence was the thing that just changed my life, knowing how to do that, because I didn't know before. I honestly didn't. So if you didn't have a situation that was really compelling to work, can you at least share an aha or a takeaway about what we've talked about that you think would be helpful to you in the future? And yep, if there is any more time, also talk about, so we're just going to go super quickly through steps 2 and 3. Which is, what is it? No, we're just going to stay with the ahas, and also any questions you have that the other people in your group might be able to help you with. If you can talk briefly about what is it you fear, that's really important, is step 2. If you want to come back to the slides for a moment. Step 2 is, not, sorry, not connected. I'm going to breeze you through this really quickly, and that way we'll do our final one in the breakouts as well. So step 2 is, so you have forgiven yourself. So imagine Gwen has forgiven herself and she sees her own innocence, and she's going to be the hero she's been waiting for. So she doesn't have to keep going back into the hamster wheel about this situation for the rest of her life. She really, really gets to free herself from this. Still, she may have fear that there are consequences of how she reacted. That's actually what she and I worked on in some ways, is the story that she could even know that this is a bad thing. The story that she could even know that something different should have happened. So for step 2, the question is, what am I thinking or fearing now? And I already asked you guys to write down that, which is the thing that you fear, that you screwed up things for your daughter and she'll never forgive you, is what plunged you into regret to start with. And so you relax into the truth of not knowing whether it's a good or a bad thing, not knowing that something different should have really happened. And chances are it's a future projection anyway. So the first question I always say is, are you sure that that's going to happen? That because you said that thing, the person's going to be mad or their feelings will hurt, or like my text, they're pulling out. And usually the way the answer is, well, no, I'm not sure. So first of all is know that you do not have a crystal ball. You cannot predict the future, even 1 minute from now. So it's really important to get realistic about that in your mind. This is very logical, and then think of all the examples where, you found that parking place way out in Timbuktu and you're like, oh, I got to walk all the way. But then you ran into an old friend from school or something where something, quote, bad happened that turned into something really good. We all have so many examples of that. You have to be in that place of expectancy about this, that moment in Gwen and her daughter's life might be some major life-changing shift in her life or her daughter's, or something else that is out of our control. So you're like, I'm not the one who knows. So in this step 2, we relax into the truth of not knowing. Let your self-protective, that's slide number 14. Sorry. Relax into the truth of not knowing. Let your self-protective instincts become right-sized as you turn the outcomes over to something greater than your monkey mind. Sometimes your worst outcome does happen, and that's a really good thing too for you, even if it means you really get on top of a pattern that you want to change because you had to live through a consequence. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And trusting that you cannot absolutely know what outcomes will be the best for yourself, others, and the planet. And the other thing is, this doesn't mean you just go around willy-nilly saying, yeah, but my heart was in the right place. Yeah, but I was just believing my thoughts. Yeah, but really what we do out of this then is when you have really cleaned up your own side of the street and for completely forgiven yourself, that's when you can make a true amends to people too. If you haven't forgiven yourself, then any effort to make amends to people will be you kind of trying to get them to tell you that you're okay. And chances are they could even get mad at you again and you would defend. Whereas if you've completely seen your side and forgiven yourself and you can say, yeah, tell me more, tell me how that felt at the hands of my behavior. I'm okay because I know I did the best I could given what I was believing. I'm shooting for the 3:45. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think, so going into the breakout
Um,
groups, I just wanted,
I'm not quite there yet.
okay,
Okay.
if you could just kind of in a nutshell, say that the two things that
Yeah.
they're supposed to share.
I'll do that. Yep. So because the second one is coming from step 3. And that we'll do that in the breakout right now. We were going to do it in the bigger group, but I love that we got a chance to work through a situation with someone. So step 3 is if you still need others or life to prove that you'll be okay, then become the one you've been waiting for. And the way you do that is you ask yourself, step 3 is ask yourself, what do I want from others or life? Imagine what it would take for you to feel like everything is okay and you can not only move on, but receive the gifts of this situation. What do you need? What do you need from others? So in Gwen's situation, she might say, I need my daughter to come back to me and tell me that she understands and that I am completely forgiven. So what do we do with step 3? You make a list of what you need from others and give it to yourself. So this is the ultimate turnaround. Anything where we think we need something from the outside world is always what we need to give ourselves or receive from God and life as it is showing up. Instead of believing, oh, it should be, it's just like, no, I already have what I need here. So again, don't tell the littlest part of you that your okayness depends on the actions or perceptions of others. Give it to yourself now, like take out the middleman. This is very biblical. This is, I believe, this is Jesus' words in some ways, is going straight to forgiveness. I feel like the minute you have asked for forgiveness for yourself, you've received it. So, and I don't see it that way through the lens of a church, but in a way it is, rather than trying to manipulate other people. And really, when this pretzeling that we do is somewhat manipulative because we're trying to get the reaction we need to know that we're okay. So I want everybody, before you go into the breakout room, to just take a moment and think about, in my situation, what would I want or need from others or life to know that I'm okay, to know that I'm forgivable. Ideally, when you really work this, you would make a whole list. You would go through everything and everybody. I would want my bank account to be full. I would want, and then give it to yourself. I had a business situation, which is where I conceived of all of this. And it's written about in the book that we'll have at the back, which is where I hit send on an email and then I was really beating myself up. And then that's when I discovered this and I saw what I wanted and needed from them. I wanted everybody to love everything that came out of my mouth in my business. I wanted them to not give up on me before they got a chance to find out how much help there was here. I wanted them to invest in themselves and in what I had to offer. So I gave all of that to myself. I put more money into the business. I decided to love everything that came out of my mouth. So you will see a couple of your flyers have typos that have and so we said, we're going to love it as it is. So that's the second part. So the first part of your breakout is just we're just going to have about 3 minutes each. And then so that the timer person set the timer for just 3 minutes. Try for 2 and then go to 3 if you need to. What was your ahas? How did you find your own innocence? At least one example. And then the second part is if you think about what you would need from others or life in your situation and you want to give it to yourself, think of one concrete way you could give it to yourself. What's one change you could make in your life, or one thing you could do that would give yourself, be the hero you've been waiting for. Okay, so let's do that. So I would love, before we're going to wrap up really soon, and then we'll do our closing. We've got about 10 minutes I would love to hear any ahas anyone has had, or any intentions to give yourself what you wanted from others, any finding of your own innocence, or just understanding a little more about self-forgiveness and self-solidarity as a result. There was a lot of conversation going on in these little groups. I don't know, I think Nancy or Vicky Fury, you guys yeah, and again, if you want to talk, we've got this mic, so you don't have to stand up. Yeah, and we'll just do it audio. I don't think if you want to get over here, you'll be in the camera light, but don't feel like you have to share. We need to just keep moving.
Well,
So we're
yeah, I'll just
right. Yep.
walk and talk. I thought Gwen, I mean, she's.
Here, hold like that. Okay.
Oh, okay. Gwen, you just spoke to my heart, and I think everybody in our little group as mothers were like, oh my gosh, how did she know what to say? I did. I was like, yes, that's me. Oh my gosh. So I love some of your wisdom, and I think what unfolded for us was this idea of taking care of yourself, of like, we deserve to take care of those precious parts of ourselves. It was just another tool in the toolbox, and in such an endearing way to talk about it, because we need tools. It's like you come across these things that haunt you, these little, and I shared with my group, maybe I've said something or acted a certain way that was perceived as really silly by my adult children. And then I think about it later, that was a disconnect. And then I torture myself. And then I'll think, this was my little tool. It wasn't as effective as yours today, Sean's, but my little tool was, I would say to myself, I'm probably the only one on the face of the earth that's even thinking about this. And so get over it, Vicki. It wasn't quite as effective as this endearing way that Sean taught us today. And so I have to thank you.
Oh, thank you. And sometimes that just get over it thing is the very thing that even kind of shames the little part of us that can't get over it. Where it's like, again, if we've been handing these little parts of us off to someone else and say, here, to your kids or whoever, and they're like, do I have a mic? Yeah, I can barely take care of my own baby. So they set the baby on the floor and the baby is screaming and crying. Instead of going and picking it up, we try to get them to pick it up. But, like, well, what do I have to do to make them know that I'm not silly? It's like you go, oh, sweetheart, I belong to you. You belong to me. There is nothing you can do to drive me away. Like, give yourself what it is you've been seeking from everyone else. Yeah, it was for me to have this, the rest of my life is going to be a mad love affair with myself. But I didn't know how before. I honestly didn't. I really did beat myself up and put myself last. And now I have the ability to put myself last by choice if I want to, but not because I've got other heads higher or other judgments are the decider of whether or not I'm worthy. So, and when they are, that, and I do go there, but I know what to do with it. That's the difference, is going through life knowing that whatever upsets you holds the key to your path out of it, whether it's the blame side or the shame side. That's why after changing the name of my little method 4 times, Radical Relationship Relief, Love Yourself Happy, and a few others, it ended up being the No Matter What Way, where you stand with, by, and for yourself no matter what. You know that you can get through any situation no matter what, because you will be able to, each situation holds within it an inherent symmetry that is absolutely the breadcrumb trail to your path out of it. So where are we at? I just want to, any other quickies? Thank you, though. That was so eloquent. And I'm sure Gwen loved knowing you're out there. So I just wanted to wrap up by saying that this is just one kind of thought that we work on, the beating yourself up thought. And I have started to really identify that there are about 5, and that's what the 5-day thought detox is about. If you're into one of those kinds of thinking, you are going to be suffering or creating suffering for those around you. It's like, so just noticing that you're in that kind of thinking, and that's what we're going to be doing in the thought detox for 1 week. We're going to look at each of those kinds of thoughts, and you do some little exercises to start getting conscious of what you're doing and how you're doing that to yourself and others, and the ways you can turn it around. So it also, though, goes with a thing that I've recently done, which is a quiz about your 5 self-sabotage styles. So if you want sort of just the names of the styles, you can, what we had little cards that we use at Pathways, but we ran out of them. So I would love it if people would be interested in getting this, if you would want to just take your blank piece of paper. And if you don't have one, we've got lots back there. Just put your name and email address. If you'd like me to have a phone number so we can send you reminders when we have events. And then Kaylee with the blue hair, who's in my groups and retreats and things, is going to stand at the back and hand you that, which is this, about the 5 self-sabotage stuff. But we just started using QR codes yesterday, and it's like magic. So it's like there's a little code in the corner, and when you just put your phone on camera and look at the little code, it takes you to the quiz. So you can take the quiz about your self-sabotage style. And normally it'll just give you your results, but since you're here today, I'll send you the whole little ebook that tells all 5 of the styles. And the other thing that we'll send you when you give us that email address and stuff, and I already have a lot of your email addresses, but it would still help for me to know that you want that, is this, the 1-page Wheel of Self-Love, the 8-page PDF, a Wheel of Self-Love worksheet, and the video, which goes through everything we did today. So we can send you that. And just before we do the closing, there's a thing on where you've got this. So each of those has the little QR code too, where you just put your phone on camera, hold it there, and it takes you to the Thrive This Time Live, which is what? Okay, everyone on the Zoom has gotten my Linktree link, which comes to a list of that. And right now, the 3-day conference is going to be, for the full 3 days, it's $97, but for right now, it's $67. So if that's how you can sign up for it there. This one is how you would sign up for the 5-day thought detox. Some of you have been in groups and things with me before, and we are starting up after doing 5 year-long mastermind groups. We took a year break for me to work on a book and some other things, and we're starting a new one in March, right after the 3-day live event. And it's a big investment, but there is a huge discount right now that I'm offering to people who were in this group. So if you also, and you're welcome to stay around and talk to me about that, or reach out to me another time, but you can, if you know you want to do that anyway, you can really save a lot of money by doing it sooner than later. We already have 7 people in that group who have already been in year-long programs with me before that are coming back, and 3 new people. So it's going to be an intimate deep dive, and there's something about being in a year-long group that's amazing. So that's not something we're really doing here today at all. The main things are the 2 things on that sheet. It was just that if any of you who knew you wanted to get back in a year-long group, you could talk to me about that. So the Thrive This Time Live is the ACT sponsored event, and the 5-day thought detox challenge that leads up to it. So just feel free to stop by there. Also, my little Spark of Self-Love ebook is the story of how this got started, and it goes much deeper. It's been an ebook, and I just did a 2nd edition, which is now on a flip book, but it's about to be published as a paper book. And Mary will be back there if you want to also do a pre-order of the paper book, because it'll be a discount from what it's going to be sold at in both cases, whether you wanted Kindle or. So that's all. But I just wanted to thank everyone for your caring for yourself here today and being the hero you've been waiting for.